You ever watch someone do something so stupid, so petty, so unbelievably intentional, that you start wondering if they woke up every morning choosing violence? Because that's exactly what this HOA officer did to my poor mailbox every single day. And trust me, this was an accident. He made eye contact with me while doing it. So I did what any reasonable, slightly unhinged homeowner would do. I built a trap he absolutely, definitely did not see coming. I first noticed the problem on a Monday morning. The type of morning where you're already late for work, your coffee tastes burnt, and life just kind of punches you in the throat for existing. I walked out to grab my mail, and my mailbox was leaning over at a 45-degree angle, like it had survived a hurricane alone. The post was cracked, the box was dented, and the door was hanging off like it was begging to be put out of its misery. At first, I thought some teenager with a baseball bat was having too much fun the night before. It happens. I live near a neighborhood where teenagers think vandalism is a sport. But then I noticed tire tracks, fresh ones, curved perfectly toward my mailbox and then away from it, not just hitting it, running over it, fully committed, zero hesitation. I crouched down, looked at the pattern, and realized this wasn't a teenager with a bat. This was a car, a big one. I reported it to the HOA because that's what they always say to do. Submit a report, file a claim, let us handle it, blah, blah, blah. So I emailed them with photos. I wasn't expecting much, but I figured at least they'd pretend to care. 10 minutes later, I get a reply from the HOA officer, whose name I won't say, but let's just call him Officer Mailbox Menace. He responds with, based on the evidence, it appears your mailbox is not compliant with HOA structural standards. Please repair or replace it immediately to avoid fines. Excuse me? My mailbox didn't break a rule. Your tire did. I called him, and he doubled down. It must have fallen due to improper installation. The HOA is not responsible. That's when suspicion crept in. He seemed way too defensive, too fast. Like someone trying to cover up a crime they assumed I had no proof of. I wanted to shrug it off, but something felt off. Next morning, mailbox is gone. Not leaning, not dented. Gone. Like it got Thanos snapped into another universe. Same tire tracks. Same angle. Same perfect curve into the dirt. Someone hadn't just hit it. They had lined up the shot. They had aimed. They had committed. At this point, I knew. I set up a camera. But I didn't use my Ring camera. Officer Mailbox Menace knew I had one, since HOA requires registration. So instead, I zip-tied a tiny hidden camera inside a fake rock in my yard. Something he wouldn't expect. Something he wouldn't even look twice at. And sure enough, the next morning, 7:14 a.m. on the dot, here he comes. Slow rolling in his HOA-branded SUV like he's on patrol. Except instead of protecting the neighborhood, he's out here committing murder. Mailbox murder. The footage shows him creeping toward my house, glancing around, then turning his wheel just enough to clip the post. He doesn't ram it. He doesn't smash it. He just nudges it with enough force for the bumper to push the whole thing over. Then he drives away like he's proud of himself. I sat there staring at the video with that. Oh, so that's how we're playing expression. Because now it wasn't just vandalism. It was targeted, purposeful, personal. This dude had beef with my mailbox and, apparently, with me. And the reason? A week earlier, I called him out in a neighborhood meeting for abusing his authority. Not yelling, not insulting. Just calmly pointing out he was running the HOA like a dictator with a parking fine fetish. Everyone laughed. He didn't. Guess I hit his ego harder than he hit my mailbox. So now I had a decision. Do I confront him? Do I file a police report? Do I bring the video to the HOA board? Or do I do something much more fun? You can guess which one I chose. I went straight to the hardware store and bought a brand new mailbox post, but not your average flimsy wooden one. Oh no, I bought a steel-reinforced, concrete-filled, ground-anchored mailbox post. The kind designed to survive hurricanes, earthquakes, and apparently HOA officers with a grudge. But I wasn't done. Inside the post, hidden behind a removable panel, I installed a pressure-sensitive vibration alarm. Nothing dangerous, just loud, instant, and startling. Basically the equivalent of slamming a metal trash can lid next to someone's head. I didn't want to actually hurt the guy. I just wanted to make sure he'd think twice before using my mailbox as his personal demolition hobby. And to hide the upgrade, I painted it the exact same color as my old post. Even scuffed it up for realism. It looked cheap, normal, innocent. Then I waited. Day 1, no hit. Day 2, he drove past but didn't do anything. Day 3, jackpot. 7:12 a.m., earlier than usual. He must have had a bad morning because he rolled up faster than I'd ever seen. The hidden camera caught it all. He didn't even try to hide it this time. He swerved just enough and, boom, he tapped the post. And the alarm inside exploded with a metal-on-metal crash, so loud it echoed off the houses. You could actually see him jump in the video. His entire body flinched like someone lit a firecracker under his seat. His SUV jerked, tires squealing, and he slammed the brakes like he thought the whole thing blew up. He sat there frozen, motionless, hands gripping the wheel, probably wondering if he had just triggered some kind of explosion. Then his SUV crawled forward, and he sped off like a guilty toddler caught stealing cookies. But that was just part one of my plan. That afternoon, I went to the HOA office to talk to him face to face, calmly, politely, with a copy of the footage on a USB drive. He was sitting at his desk, pretending to be busy, but he looked nervous, like he had heard the sound again in his nightmares. I said, "Look, we need to talk about my mailbox." He said, "I already told you." I said, "No, I think you'll want to see this." I slid the USB across the desk. He paled, not just nervous, scared. He didn't even plug it in. He didn't have to. He knew. He muttered something about misunderstandings, about being distracted, about not meaning to cause damage, and all kinds of excuses that contradicted each other. I just listened, calm, silent, letting him hang himself with his own words. Finally, I said, "If my mailbox ever gets hit again, I'll send this footage to the HOA board, and the police, and every neighbor who's ever complained about you." He gulped. I smiled. Conversation over. But if the story ended there, it wouldn't be worth telling. Because the next morning, something happened that proved Officer Mailbox Menace had not learned his lesson at all. The next morning started off too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels staged, like the universe is taking a deep breath before doing something stupid. I walked out with my coffee, checked my mailbox, and for the first time in a week, it was perfectly intact. No dents, no scratches, no tire tracks. Almost suspiciously perfect. But then I noticed something weird across the street. Officer Mailbox Menace's HOA SUV was parked unusually far from the curb, angled like he had parked in a hurry. And even stranger, he wasn't sitting inside it. He was standing next to it, talking to someone, not a neighbor, not another HOA member, a police officer, not HOA security, a real police officer. I immediately tensed up. Was he reporting me? Was he trying to twist the story first? Maybe he thought the alarm inside my mailbox counted as some kind of booby trap. The dude hit my property with his car daily, and you want to call the cops? I casually walked toward my yard, pretending to water a plant, even though the plant was definitely plastic. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I was absolutely eavesdropping. He was explaining something with way too much enthusiasm, pointing in my direction like he was giving a tour of a crime scene. The officer nodded a few times, looking confused. Then he walked toward me. I quickly put down my watering can. Correction. I drop-kicked it across the yard like an idiot trying to look innocent. "Morning," the officer said. I gave him the most non-threatening smile I could muster, which probably looked like I was trying to sell him insurance. He glances at my mailbox. "We gotta report your mailbox may contain mechanical elements?" Mechanical elements. Really? That's the phrase he went with? I nodded. "Yes, sir. It contains a vibration alarm. Nothing harmful, just loud." Officer Real Cop raised an eyebrow. "Why?" I showed him the footage. The hits. The tire marks. Officer Mailbox Menace gently grazing my mailbox like it owed him money. And then the dramatic jump scare when the alarm went off. Real Cop watched it all, quiet, expression unreadable. When the video ended, he slowly turned toward Officer Mailbox Menace, who was hovering behind him like a guilty ghost. "You didn't mention this part," the real officer said. Mailbox Menace stuttered, I was doing routine patrol. I must have misjudged the distance." Real officer held up a hand, shutting him down mid-excuse. "Sir, you drove onto private property and damaged it multiple times and lied about it." The HOA officer shrank like a balloon losing air. I almost felt bad. Almost. Real cop asked if I wanted to file a formal report. Truthfully, part of me wanted to. But another part knew it would escalate this whole circus into a bigger drama. And I had something else in mind. "I don't need to file a report," I said. "I just want the harassment to stop." The real officer nodded and turned back to Mailbox Menace. "You're lucky. If he had pressed charges, this would be a different conversation. But from now on, stay off this property unless you have official business. Understand?" Officer Mailbox Menace nodded, face red, jaw tight, humiliation dripping off him like sweat. I thought that was the end of it. HOA officer embarrassed. Mailbox is safe. Peace restored. I was wrong. Because once a petty person is embarrassed publicly, their brain doesn't reset. It malfunctions. It goes into revenge mode for absolutely no logical reason. That same evening, I got a letter on my door. No envelope. No signature. Just a folded piece of paper shoved under the doormat like a middle school threat note. Inside, in the nastiest handwriting I've ever seen, was a warning. Remove the device from your mailbox immediately or face fines. You are out of compliance. It wasn't official HOA paper. It wasn't signed. And I knew exactly who wrote it because he spelled device wrong. No one else in the HOA spells at a 7th grade level except one man. Now he was trying to find me for what? Protecting my property from him? I laughed so hard I actually wheezed. Then I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. But part of me knew this wasn't over. This man had gone from mailbox vandal to petty revenge villain. 2 hours later, he came back. It was dark now, almost 10 p.m. My neighborhood is quiet at night. Nobody drives after 9 unless they're coming home from work or running from their problems. I was in my living room when I saw headlights creeping past my window. Slow. Too slow. The kind of slow that indicates criminal intent, or someone tried to find the house they used to deliver pizza to in 1999. I peeked through the blinds. It was him. And this time, he wasn't in the HOA SUV. He was in a personal car. No decals. No uniform. No authority to hide behind. He idled in front of my house for a good minute, looking at my mailbox like it had personally insulted his family lineage. I grabbed my phone and started recording because at this point, the man was giving villain energy. Then the idiot made his move. He opened his door, stepped out, and walked toward my mailbox carrying a toolbox. A toolbox. What was his plan? Unscrew it? Disassemble it? Take a hostage? He knelt down, opened the toolbox, and pulled out a wrench. Right then, the mailbox alarm, still active, picked up his movement. Clang. He jumped like a cat thrown into a bathtub. The wrench flew out of his hand and clattered onto the road. He stumbled backward. So fast, he tripped on his own foot and fell flat on the sidewalk. I stepped outside, phone still recording. "Evening," I said casually. He froze on the ground like if he didn't move, maybe I wouldn't see him. Like a raccoon caught stealing Doritos. "What are you doing?" I asked. He scrambled up, brushing dirt off his shirt. I was checking your mailbox. At 10 p.m.? With a wrench. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish trying to explain taxes. I kept recording. You know this looks like attempted vandalism, and trespassing, and retaliation, all on camera. He panicked. "Stop recording." "No," I said. "You want to check my mailbox. Now you're starring in the sequel to your own disaster." He rushed his car, nearly tripping again, then sped off so fast he left a skid mark on the road. Not the tire kind. He seemed like the type who'd panic himself into an accident. I went back inside, knowing this was now more than a feud. This was a war. and I was absolutely going to win it. But little did I know, the next day, this mess would escalate from mailbox beef to full-on HOA courtroom drama, and I'd end up facing the entire board in a meeting designed to humiliate me. Except they forgot one thing. I had all the evidence they didn't want. The next morning, I woke up to an email that felt like it had been written by someone who was smiling way too hard while typing it. You know, the energy, the "I think I finally got you" energy. The subject line read, "Mandatory HOA board hearing, property violation." I groaned. Not surprised, just annoyed, because there was only one person petty enough to pull this stunt. And sure enough, the message claimed that I had installed illegal mechanical devices on community property. First of all, it's my property. Second of all, it's a vibration alarm. Not a missile, but the best part? They scheduled the hearing for that same evening. No notice, no time to prepare, no due process. Pure sabotage, designed by a man whose life mission was now defeating a mailbox. I went anyway. HOA meetings always look the same. A folding table, mismatched chairs, and 3 board members who looked like they were summoned against their will. Behind them sat Officer Mailbox Menace, arms crossed, posture screaming, "I have the moral high ground," which was bold coming from a man who commits drive-by mailbox homicides. The board president cleared her throat. "We received a complaint regarding your mailbox." I raised my eyebrows. A single complaint from the person who damaged it. Mailbox Menace stiffened like I'd slapped him with a dictionary. She continued, "He claims you installed a hazardous device that may pose a danger to the community." I calmly placed my phone on the table. "Before we continue, I'd like to present some evidence." I connected the phone to the small projector they kept for meetings, and then, in glorious high definition, I played the footage. Clip 1, him hitting the mailbox. Clip 2, him doing it again the next day. Clip 3, the alarm going off, him panicking. Clip 4, nighttime toolbox sabotage attempt, featuring slapstick fall and wrench toss. By the time the 4th clip ended, the room was dead silent. The board members stared at the screen like they had just watched a wildlife documentary about an endangered species. The idiot patrol officer. Finally, the treasurer whispered, "Is that you, Tom?" Tom, the name of our villain. Tom turned purple. It's taken out of context. I laughed. What's the context? Practicing demolition? Performance art. The secretary shot him a look. "You told us the homeowner was the problem." He sputtered. "He booby-trapped his mailbox." "It's an alarm," I said. "A loud noise. The only reason it went off is because you tried to dismantle my mailbox with a wrench at 10 o'clock at night." The president rubbed her temples so hard I thought she'd erase her own eyebrows. "Tom, did you file a false claim?" Tom opened his mouth, but nothing coherent came out, just air and shame. The board held a private 3-minute consultation, which was basically them whispering angrily at each other, like parents deciding which kid deserves the yelling. They returned looking exhausted. "We find no violation on the homeowner's part," the president said. "And Tom, your conduct is unacceptable. You're relieved of HOA enforcement duties effective immediately." Tom looked like someone had unplugged his soul, and if the story ended there, it would have been satisfying enough. But karma wasn't done with him yet, because the board didn't just strip him of his fake badge. They decided to investigate his other reports. And oh boy, apparently Tom had a long history of power tripping, lie about residents, issuing fake warnings, and even abusing parking rules to harass people he didn't like. In other words, the mailbox hits weren't even his peak. They were his warm-up act. By the time I got home that night, half the neighborhood knew what happened. News spreads fast when the HOA drama is this spicy. And suddenly, people who had never spoken to me before were waving from their driveways, smiling, giving thumbs up. One neighbor even shouted, "Hey, you're the mailbox guy." Legend. I was not prepared for this level of local fame, but I was also not mad about it. The next morning, for the first time in over a week, I walked outside with zero anxiety. No tire marks. No dents. No petty sabotage notes written by someone who failed high school English. Peace. Finally, Or so I thought, because the universe has a sense of humor, a dark one. Around noon, I see a moving truck pull into the neighborhood. Not unusual. People move in, people move out, unless the person moving is Tom. And it was. He stepped out of the truck looking like he had aged 10 years in one night. No uniform, no clipboard, just a defeated man carrying a lamp that looked too ugly to be worth keeping. He darted toward his house, avoiding everyone's eyes. Neighbors whispered. Someone recorded. A kid asked if he was going to jail. It was chaos. I didn't smile. I'm not heartless. But I didn't feel bad either. Tom wasn't moving because of me. He was moving because the HOA board discovered he'd been abusing his position for months, and his wife apparently said she wasn't living in a neighborhood where her husband was known as the mailbox criminal. I can't blame her. That's a reputation you don't recover from. But wait, karma had one more gift. Around 4 p.m., Tom pulled out his driveway in his personal car, loaded with boxes. He was leaving. Gone. Just like that. He drove past my house slowly. Not menacingly. Not angrily. Just embarrassed. I walked to my porch, nodded respectfully, and raised my hand in a polite wave. He avoided eye contact. Then it happened. He drove forward, not looking where he was going, and bam! He ran over his own mailbox. I put my hand over my mouth to keep from laughing out loud. It wasn't even my fault. His front tire kissed the thing like it owed him money. The impact jolted his car, and the post cracked in half. He froze, looked at the mailbox, looked at me, looked at the mailbox again. And I swear to you, he let out the deepest, most defeated sigh I have ever heard from a grown adult human. Then he just kept driving. Didn't stop. Didn't check the damage. Didn't pick up the pieces. He said, "Not today," and fled the neighborhood like he'd been exorcised. And that should have been the end of the saga. But one last twist remained. The part where the HOA, impressed by how I handled the situation, approached me with an offer I never expected. 2 days after Tom officially became a neighborhood ghost story, I got another email from the HOA board. For a second, my stomach dropped. Trauma response from weeks of mailbox war. But the subject line was surprisingly calm. Request for a quick meeting. Positive matter. Positive? From the HOA? That alone felt like a historic event. I walked into the clubhouse expecting more drama, but instead of tension, the room felt normal. The board members smiled, which should have been my first clue something strange was happening. The president gestured for me to sit. "We just wanted to thank you." I blinked. For what? Surviving a mailbox assassination attempt. They laughed harder than I expected. "No," she said, "for handling everything with patience, evidence, and professionalism. You kept things from getting out of hand. Honestly, most people would have called the police, sued the HOA, or burned the clubhouse down." I nodded. Well, to be fair, I considered option 3. Everyone laughed again, even the treasurer, who looked like the type who hasn't genuinely laughed since 1998. Then the president slid a folder toward me. Inside was a proposal. "We'd like you to join the HOA advisory committee. Not enforcement, just oversight. You'd help make sure things stay transparent and fair." I stared at the paper. Me? On the committee? After everything? I should have said no. I really should have. But part of me also already knew people trusted me now. Neighbors who'd never even spoken to me suddenly waved, asked for advice, invited me to barbecues. Apparently standing up to a corrupt HOA officer made me the unofficial neighborhood Batman. I didn't say yes immediately. I told them I'd think about it. As I walked home, I realized something. The entire neighborhood was suddenly peaceful. Kids were playing. People were gardening. Mailboxes stood tall and unafraid. No creeping SUVs. No late-night sabotage attempts. No pathetic threats on notebook paper. It was almost unsettling how quiet things became. When I reached my front door, I paused. My upgraded mailbox stood proudly by the road, sunlight hitting the steel post like it was the Excalibur of suburban justice. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel tense walking past it. Later that evening, a neighbor I barely knew approached me as I took the trash out. "You know," he said, "we've lived here 8 years. This is the first time the HOA feels normal. Because the guy who used to run around like a hall monitor on steroids finally left? That, he said, and because you showed everyone he wasn't untouchable. I shrugged. I just wanted my mailbox to stop getting bullied. He laughed. Yeah, but you started something bigger. Maybe I had. I didn't realize it until people started telling me their own stories. Small abuses, petty fines, intimidation, nonsense rules Tom invented to feel powerful. He'd been terrorizing the neighborhood under the radar. But once my video made the rounds, everything unraveled. A week later, the board sent out a community email officially announcing new HOA rules, clearer procedures, transparent enforcement, no nighttime inspections, mandatory evidence before issuing warnings, body cams for any officer interactions, and, my personal favorite, no HOA member is allowed within 5 feet of another person's mailbox without written permission. I laughed so hard, I nearly fell off my porch reading that one. The neighborhood slowly shifted into something it hadn't been in years. Calm, friendly, surprisingly social. People actually stepped outside without worrying about being fined because their recycling bin lid wasn't perfectly aligned with the Earth's gravitational axis. I eventually agreed to join the HOA advisory committee, not to enforce, not to police, but to keep an eye on things, to make sure what happened with Tom never happened again. And the board was grateful. Every now and then, someone still brings up the mailbox saga. A neighbor will grin and say, "Hey, remember when the HOA officer tried to fight your mailbox and lost?" Or, "You're the guy who engineered the Fort Knox mailbox, right?" I don't correct them. It's kind of a fun reputation. And as for the mailbox itself, still standing, still flawless, still undefeated. Even better, nothing has so much as touched it since the alarm incident. It's like it developed its own myth. The kids call it the mailbox that fights back. One evening, weeks later, I was sitting on my porch when a familiar car drove through the neighborhood. Tom's. I recognized the dented bumper. Probably from that fateful moment, he hit his own mailbox. He didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He just drove by like a tourist visiting the scene of his greatest humiliation. For a second, our eyes met through the window. He wasn't angry. He wasn't smug. He just looked embarrassed. Then he drove off, probably never to return again. And honestly, that was the perfect ending. A peaceful neighborhood, a legendary mailbox, and a man who learned the hard way that some things in life are stronger than ego. As for me, I installed a tiny metal plaque on the back of my mailbox post. Nothing flashy, nothing too obvious, just a small reminder of everything that happened. It reads, "Protected by common sense and consequences." And that's the full story of how an HOA officer tried to run over my mailbox every day and ended up destroying his job, his reputation, and ironically his own mailbox instead. If you're still here listening to this wild saga, thank you. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next one.